What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. It's Christine with Gauge Girl Training, an online meal planning and coaching service. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about eating for your body type. So let's get started. So in the past, you guys have probably seen my videos on training for your body type. However, I've never done a detailed video explaining how to eat for each of the different body types. And in this video, I'm going to get into very specific examples, explain the who, what, when, where, why, and give you every single thing you need to know about eating for your body type. So a lot of people think that your body type just simply describes the way you look. However, it actually goes beyond that. It can dictate a lot of things regarding hormones as well as your sympathetic nervous system. So we're going to be talking about the involuntary part of your nervous system, which is also known as the autonomic nervous system. Now, this may control things that you may be aware of as well as things that you may be unaware of. This includes things like digestion, homeostasis, sweating, your blood pressure. This involuntary part of your nervous system is broken down into two sections, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So you can see in this diagram here explaining the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic. So the sympathetic is things like your pupils dilating. It's your body inhibiting saliva production. It's your heart rate. It's things that stimulate glucose release, the stimulation of epinephrine and norepinephrine release, the inhibition of your stomach, pancreas, and intestines. These are types of things that we will be talking about, and this is dictated by body type as opposed to the parasympathetic, which are things listed here on the left-hand side of this diagram. So the reason this is important is because the sympathetic part of your nervous system is something that is a flight or fight response. There are physique characteristics that can be linked to metabolic differences between individuals. And as a result, there is some important information you can gain about how you should be eating for your specific body type. So once somebody figures out their body type, you can essentially dial in your nutrients accordingly based off of that and make much more strategic, conscious choices that are going to help you reach your physique goals. And there are very few people that actually perfectly fit into one category. And I'm going to explain the three categories of body type: endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, as well as the exceptions to those categories and what you need to know exactly for how you should be eating. So we're going to first start with the ectomorph. The ectomorph tends to be a very skinny, lean, naturally lean physique. The ectomorphs are hard gainers. They struggle to gain muscle. They struggle to add size. No matter what they do, they have a tendency to stay lean. The thing you need to know about each body type is that each body type has a different level of tolerances to carbohydrates. Ectomorphs have a tendency to be high carb tolerant, which means they can handle a substantially higher amount of carbohydrates than the mesomorph as well as the endomorph. Now, the ectomorph examples would be somebody like a Kendall Jenner, somebody like a Gwyneth Paltrow, a Kelly Rowland, are just naturally thin no matter what they do. Now, they can gain muscle, but they are going to strategically need to change the way they eat to accomplish that. The next body type is the mesomorph. For those of you who've been seeing my physique updates, I am a mesomorph. Mesomorphs can gain weight easily. They can lose weight easily. They tend to be metabolically healthy. However, in this video, I'm going to get a little bit more in depth. And for my mesomorphs, you can kind of go two directions. It's going to depend on your carb tolerance. In general, most mesomorphs, they tend to gain body fat evenly. So they don't tend to have larger hips. They don't tend to be naturally curvy. They don't tend to store it anywhere specifically. However, mesomorphs have varying degrees of carb tolerances. And I see this very commonly with my clients where there are two types of carb tolerances. Well, actually three, but in general, it's more two. There are mesomorphs with medium carb tolerance and mesomorphs with low carb tolerance. So if you are a mesomorph and you have medium carb tolerance, which is about average, that means you can include carbs in your diet, you don't have any issues with them, you have a tendency, like I said, to gain weight easily, lose weight easily. Celebrity examples would be like a Britney Spears, like a Janet Jackson. However, I have some mesomorphs where you look like a mesomorph, but you have a low carb intolerance. And when that happens, you may have a mesomorph looking body, but that means your metabolism responds more like an endomorph. So you could not have big hips or big glutes or big thighs, but your ability to lose weight may be like that more of an endomorph. If that's you, you need to change the way you eat accordingly. I'm going to get into more detail in a moment on that. Now, next is my endomorphs. My endomorphs have a tendency to have a slightly lower metabolism. They do have a tendency to gain muscle pretty easily. They have a hard time losing body fat. For my endomorphs, they have a tendency to be either low carb tolerance or medium carb tolerance. So for my endomorphs, their shape can be two different shapes. And you guys are used to seeing the curvy endomorphs with like the more bottom heavy look, the big round glutes, the big wide hips, the big thighs, and smaller waist. But there are some apple shaped endomorphs where they have a tendency to store all of their weight in the torso. As a result, that typically indicates a much lower tolerance for carbohydrates, because when you have high levels of visceral fat, your body tends to not be as effective at breaking down the food that you are consuming and using it as energy. Instead, it's using it more and storing it as fat. And that happens when there are insulin issues. So as a result, you guys, the one thing you really want to understand for each body type is your carb tolerance level. How do you know your carb tolerance level? Well, let's get into it. So my ectomorphs, again, the leaner physiques, have a tendency to have a faster metabolic rate as well as a higher carb tolerance. This is due to the fact that they have a higher sensitivity to catecholamines and that things like epinephrine and norepinephrine. So as a result of that, that is going to give them a higher metabolic rate. So this group generally will do best with more carbohydrates in the diet along with moderate protein and lower fat. So a decent starting point for my ectomorphs is around 55% carbs, 25% protein, as well as 20% fat. However, in general, just think higher carbs, lower fat if you are an ectomorph. So now for my mesomorphs, which have a predisposition to gaining muscle quite easily and have a slightly easier time maintaining a lower body fat, the reason for this is because mesomorphs have a tendency to be testosterone and growth hormone dominant. And this is the reason from a hormonal level why mesomorphs have an easier time gaining muscle and burning fat and keeping a lower overall body fat level without as much effort as my endomorphs. Now, mesomorphs can do best on a mixed style diet. However, by balancing your protein, carbs, and fat, a split of about 40% carb, 30 protein, 30 fat can work well. However, with the exception of my mesomorphs who have a lower tolerance to carbohydrates. If that is you, you're going to want to eat more like an endomorph, which I'm going to explain here in a moment. So for my endomorphs have a higher propensity for energy storage. What that really means is their body is more naturally inclined to store excess carbohydrates as fat. As a result of that, this can easily lead to lean mass gain, but it can lead to fat gain if you are not carefully dialing in your portions, your nutrition, and your energy expenditure. Now, this can typically mean a lower carbohydrate tolerance. However, I have seen endomorphs who do perfectly fine with higher carbs, and there are exceptions to the rule. So just because you are an endomorph, do not assume that you cannot eat carbs and that you have to be low carb, because you do not necessarily need to If your body has really good insulin sensitivity, and when you eat carbs, your pancreas has no issue in increasing your insulin to shuttle them out of the bloodstream, that's not an issue. So endomorphs do have a tendency to do better on higher fat, lower carb approaches. However, you do need to time your carbohydrates accordingly around your training if you are an endomorph. It doesn't mean go no carb, it just makes sure that the carbs that you do have are timed around your workout so that way they can be utilized for glycogen replenishment as opposed to being stored as body fat. You still need your carbs for my endomorphs. Now, a starting point for endomorphs would be around 25% carb, 35% protein, and 40% fat. Now, in general, for endomorphs, think higher fats, higher protein, lower carbs. But you guys, this is just a starting point, and I'm going to be getting into more details of the who, what, when, where, why you would make these exceptions and details and deviations for how to do this for your body type. If you want a customized meal plan for your body type, you can purchase one off of GageGirlTraining.com. DM me on Instagram if you want to know more about your body type. But the one thing you guys do need to know, which I've never talked about in other videos, is how to assess your carb tolerance. If you've got questions, please comment below. I'm going to be continuing this series on eating for your body type, macros for your body type, and I'd be happy to answer all of the questions. So comment below, guys, give the video a thumbs up. See you in the next one.